Welcome to tonight's regular board meeting for May 15th. We would like to, if you would, join me with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mr. Cahan. Here. Mr. Ross. Here. Mr. Skidmore. Here. Ms. Parkhurst.
Here.
Mr. Eastwood.
Here.
Thank you.
Tonight, we will be going into an executive session fairly soon, but there are a couple special presentations, and before we would leave for that, we'd like to pass that on to Aaron and see what is coming up.
First, I see we have representatives from our Kids First group, and I'd like to invite you to come up to the podium and share a little bit of information about the organization.
Good evening. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Lori Walburn, and my husband Brett and I have lived here in Medina for the past 18 years. We have 3 children in the school system. I have a junior at the high school, an 8th grader at Claggett, and our youngest is at Heritage. I'm here with Bob Rollins tonight, and we have some information. Tim Turton wanted to be here tonight, but unfortunately he had a meeting, not able to be here. Bob, myself, and Therese Rollins will now be co-chairing Kids First. We'd like to give you a little information. I've got a brief reintroduction of a group that we launched a few years ago in concert with a successful levy campaign. As Tim wanted to be here to say this, as the Blues Brothers famously said, we are getting the band back together again. We have reinvigorated the Kids First initiative. As many of you know, Kids First is dedicated to the goal of partnering with community members, including business and senior citizens, and working to provide students with educational opportunities they need. The purpose is to truly form a symbiotic relationship between all groups on an ongoing basis and not just centered around a levy campaign. We have divided the balance of 2017 into 3 parts. Right now, we are reorganizing and solidifying a new steering committee, plus reestablishing the Kids First brand. We have already filled many positions on our steering committee, and it will be in place for years to come. This summer, we'll be taking part in targeted activities like the Farmers Market and the kickoff to the 2017-2018 school year with a giant fundraiser. This fall, we will truly launch activities around the community that will fulfill our promise of helping the kids as well as the broader Medina community. So, thank you for your time tonight.
Okay. And I'd like to thank our parents and community members that are involved with the Kids First group. That organization is all volunteers and an outside organization to support the schools. And I know in meeting with Tim that one of their initiatives, yes, is to help us out in promoting future levies. But in addition to that, they wanted to bring the band back together and be more than a just support of the district financially, but be a support of our students on a year-to-year basis, whether we're looking at a levy or not. So, and we appreciate that. Thank you. Next up, my favorite part of the board meeting, we've got Root Middle School here to present.
We're just trying to get my PowerPoint up here. Give me 1 sec. So at Root, we've got some wonderful activities going on in the spring, and I'm very excited. I think we're the last school to present this year, but you saved the best for last. So I'm excited to talk about some of the great things we've got going on. I've got 3 great students that are going to present here tonight, 1 great project, and 1 outstanding accomplishment by one of our students here at Root. So the first one we're going to talk about is Bike to School, but we've also got Project Learn that we're going to talk about. Bike to School, we've been doing Bike to School, Ms. Condosta? 6 years. Ms. Condosta actually operates our Bike to School program at Root. She's been doing it for 6 years. She does an outstanding job. You can always tell when Bike to School's coming because she's in the office constantly asking questions, getting things organized, getting people ready, and she does an amazing job. So we're very happy that Mel does it, and we hope she continues on for many more years. Every year about this time she says she's not going to do it again, so I got to put that plug in right there. But I've got 2 students that are going to talk, Grace Barman and Connor O'Neill. These students both took part in the project this year, and they're going to talk a little bit about the background, and you can ask them questions at the end. Connor, go.
Root just completed their 6th annual Bike to School Challenge on Friday. Biking to school takes place every day around the world. For some, it is the only way to get to school because they live further away to walk. For others, they have a choice of walking, riding their bike, the bus, or being dropped off by car. Riding your bikes has physical and mental benefits. It has been known to increase your brain activity, increase memory retention, and increase attention span. Riding to school is also a great stress release. Riding can also help with sleeping better at night, which also has direct benefits to children's health, mental wellness, and ability to learn.
A bike trip to school can be just as fast as driving a car in traffic, fighting the drop-off, and parking lot crunch. Root's highest day of students riding was National Bike to School Day, Wednesday, May 10th. 85 students participated on this day. Root took 1,388 bike riders during the 2-week challenge, riding 2.776 miles from round trip. Root's riders also burned 83,280 calories from riding. The calories burned is equal to the number of calories in about 100 cans of Coca-Cola.
This program would not be possible without staff members, the community, and local businesses here in Medina. I would like to thank Jim Shields for arranging police officers to come to the bike fair to license bikes. I would also like to thank him for contacting the mayor to speak at AI Root's Bike to School assemblies. I would like to thank Mayor Hanwell for attending our assembly, as well as thanking Officer Rowland for contacting the Cleveland Clinic Healthy Medina for the contribution to this event.
Our 2017 sponsors are Subway on North Court, Bike Cleveland, Schoolhouse Scoops, Domino's Pizza, Honeybee Bakery, Giant Bicycle, Cleveland Clinic Healthy Medina, Dairy Queen, Courthouse Pizza, Rinky Dink Family Fun Center, Century Cycles, Cupcake a Day, Quaker Steak and Lube, Dan's Dogs, Cleveland Indians, Handles, Castle Noel, Cool Beans, Sports World, Guy's Pizza, Melian Orthodontics, and Medina County Recreation Center.
And definitely a special thank you goes out to Century Cycles. Mel works great. What's the name of the gentleman who's retiring?
Mike Petcher, he's general manager.
Mike Petcher, he's general manager at Century Cycles. This is his last year. He's actually retiring, so they're going to have big shoes to fill getting him to come in and continue on that pace. So we're very thankful for the work they've done over the years. It's an outstanding program. It's just fun to see. And if you know the weather in the last 2 weeks, that first week of Bike to School was not pleasant, to say the least, but the kids came out in force and they rode even when it was raining, not to mention all the freebies that were available for them. So the kids came out, they supported the program, and we had a great experience. So I'm very thankful for them. I'm thankful for Mel, and I'm thankful for all the kids who participated. So thank you very much. So the next one I'm going to present is Abigail Gaiman. You know, as a principal, you get kids that'll come into your office all the time, and they'll come in with these great ideas of programs that they want to start, and a lot of times they're just throwing it out there to see if somebody will pick up and run with it. So what I try to do a lot of times in those situations is talk to those kids and tell them steps they need to follow, things they need people to get involved, things they need to do, and sometimes that's where the conversation ends. Those kids think, well, that's a lot of work, that's more than I intended to do, and I'm out. Not Abigail. Abigail came to see me. She's going to talk here in a moment. She came to see me, and she had a program for doing a book fundraiser in the building. So we talked about getting things together and talking about how we can get classes involved. We talked about maybe the class with the largest one, we'd get a pizza party. So that was kind of my input. I was able to throw money at the situation and say, you know what, let's see what we can do. And Abigail ran with it. She got letters out to all the teachers. She got them motivated, and I will allow her to talk a little bit about it. But she raised an amazing number. She had 1,425 books that were donated by the Root students and staff that she was able to donate to a local Medina Project Learn. It's really taken off in the press. I'm going to actually give her a newspaper clipping. She was in the Cleveland Plain Dealer yesterday. So I have the article here, but I'm going to let Abigail talk a little bit about the program and why she wanted to start it. Sure.
Before you go, hey, Pro, her picture is on that Root Middle School board presentation. It just happens to be on the last page, and it's a really cool picture. Thanks. Sorry about that, Mr. Farson.
Nope, no problem. All right, you're up.
So, I like to read, and so I really enjoyed having all those books in my house. But I also really think it's a great cause to give so many books to an organization that will help adults learn how to read so that they can enjoy that too. And that's kind of how I got the idea. And then, yeah. A bunch of people helped me, like the teachers, they were a great help, and then Mr. Farson and Mrs. Miller helped, like, guide me on how to do it, and then.
Abigail, I would definitely like to thank and commend you for all of your hard work. You know, one of the things we try and do as a school district, besides teaching 1, 2, 3s and ABCs, is to help develop character and pride in the community. And you definitely represent both of those, not only for Root Middle School, but for our school district as well, and I appreciate that.
Thanks.
Abigail, I would also like to say thank you. You're an inspiration. To see you take the initiative from an idea to help other people. I think it's phenomenal. And as an 8th grader, I'm just very excited to see where things are going to take you. Thank you very much.
So if I could just share one last note. I've been a principal for quite some time, and I think you hear a lot of comments from people in the community sometime or different generations, and they'll say, boy, I'm really concerned about this group of kids coming through with all the technology and the social media that goes on. And these are the kind of moments when you feel really good about being in education and understanding that there are tremendous people out there, and they're tremendous young people. And I am so proud of her that she took the initiative with an idea and followed through on it and did amazing things for this community and providing them something that they so drastically need. So I'm so proud of her. I'm so proud of all the kids at Root, but Abigail typifies what we're looking for in our kids in Medina. So thank you, Abigail.
I would like to real quickly thank our Bike to School program as well. I hope you're going to sign on to do it for another year. I think it'd be great. I think it'd be great to see the program even expand beyond the 3 buildings that are currently participating. But I got to tell you, there's days when I didn't want to go out to my car and I'd drive past Claggett or drive past Root, and it was just piled with bikes. So our students were really dedicated to the program, and it's ended, and I was actually at Root towards dismissal today, and I saw all the bikes coming down the street as I was pulling in the lot. So I think it's a great lesson for our kids that extends even beyond that week.
All right, we're going to go from this point into a short executive session. Do not expect it to last more than 15-20 minutes, and we will return shortly.
I'd like to make a motion to move into executive session to consider the employment compensation of a public employee, as well as preparing for conducting or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with employees concerning their compensation or the other terms and conditions of their employment.
I'll second it. Mr. Cahill.
Aye.
Mr. Ross. Aye. Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
And Mr. Eastwood.
Aye.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask Mr. Burkhart, Dr. Kwolek, and Mr. Shields if you could please join us.
All right, we're returning from the executive session. We'll resume the regular board meeting.
I did want to clarify something, given that I made the first motion for the executive session. We had two of them on the agenda, and I read the second one, not the first one. And so the other one, in addition to what we did discuss, the third thing was supposed to be X'd was legal matters. So legal matters to the executive session.
All right. The next thing on our agenda is the approval of the minutes. We have the minutes from the regular meeting of April 17th. We have minutes from the work session of May 1st and from a special meeting on May 8th.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve all three of those meeting minutes.
I'll second that.
Mr. Cahill.
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
Mr. Eastwood.
Aye.
Thank you.
And Aaron. Oh. We do have a consent agenda tonight. We would like to have a motion to, are there any additions, removals beyond what we've already taken care of earlier? Can we have the approve or make a motion?
I would like to make a motion, given that we now have taken out H, J, K, L, or H, J, and K out of the original consent agenda. Thank you for doing so. I'll make the motion that we approve the consent agenda, not those items, but the rest of them.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Mr. Cahill.
Aye, thank you.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Mr. Eastwood.
Aye.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to invite Mr. Matty up. He's going to present on some pending textbook adoption items.
All right, thank you, Mr. Sable. Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to bring several proposed secondary curriculum adoptions before the board this evening. I need to apologize right off the bat that the sample textbooks are serving as a great paperweight in my office right now on my conference room table. Becky was over today. She saw them sitting there, and I forgot to bring them this evening, but they are all available for public review for the next 30 days, so I welcome board members, community members to stop over, and we'd be happy to share those materials with you. So first, the Department of Instruction is pleased to recommend this evening College Preparatory Math, CPM, for adoption in our Algebra 1 classes at Medina High School and Honors Algebra 1 at both Root and Claggett Middle School. And CPM, of course, is the mathematics program that we adopted and implemented this year in grades 6 through 8. So we are asking the board to consider a phased-in program. We plan to transition the new program over 3 years at the high school, beginning with Algebra 1 and Honors Algebra 1 next fall, Geometry and Honors Geometry in the fall of 2018-19, and finally Algebra 2 with Trigonometry in the fall of 2019-20. This effort is part of our goal to develop a coherent mathematics program across the district. And in fact, next year we will also begin reevaluating our K-5 math program and moving towards adoption there as well. Now, there's several reasons why we propose a phased-in program and why we believe this approach will benefit all stakeholders. First, we believe it will be beneficial to students for the transition to be gradual and to move forward smoothly with our current 8th grade class. It's also best for teachers to move forward gradually and intentionally with a well-planned implementation and professional development plan. And this is especially important for teachers who teach more than one math course at the high school. Otherwise, it could be an overwhelming experience for them, so we're cognizant of that. It will also be beneficial in terms of parent education, which is critical. Changes in the way we approach teaching and learning can be overwhelming to parents and difficult to keep up with. So the phased-in approach will give us 3 years to educate and communicate with parents about these changes. So we'll continue to offer opportunities for parents to learn more about the ways that their children are learning mathematics, similar to what we offered this year with curriculum evenings at the high school next fall, and then hopefully throughout the course of next year and the next 3 years. And finally, it makes good financial sense to spread the adoption implementation over the next 3 years, because we know that textbooks and materials are expensive, so this is one way we can offset some upfront costs by spreading it out. So our vision from the very beginning was to adopt an inquiry-rich program across grades 6 through 11. However, we approach this adoption in the same manner we always do, with the engagement and participation of our teachers and department heads, because we believe consensus and teacher buy-in are critical elements to be successful in implementing a new curriculum. It doesn't matter how great the program is if teachers are not willing to use it once they have it available to them. So therefore, what we did this year is we formed a textbook review committee comprised of department representatives from both middle schools and the high schools in the fall of 2016. And the committee met 4 times throughout the year, and they developed a shared vision for mathematics instruction. We surveyed the entire mathematics department based on key elements of the committee's vision, and that informed our decision-making process. We read and discussed research, we participated in a book study, and reviewed a wide variety of other mathematics programs available, including CPM. So on Thursday, April 6th, all the high school Algebra 1 and geometry teachers were sent to Solon High School to observe CPM and dialogue with experienced CPM teachers. Solon's about 8 years into their implementation of CPM. And prior to that, Mr. Harrison, Jeff Harrison, principal at Medina High School, met individually with teachers to discuss taking a new instructional direction. This was really a partnership between our department and Mr. Harrison at the high school. We really appreciate his leadership in this effort as well. And finally, on Monday, April 10th, the entire department met for final discussions, and we debriefed regarding their visit to Solon, and we were able to reach consensus. So the merits of this program are many, but really this is not about a program. It's about good teaching. And we said that last year with the middle school implementation as well. CPM offers really extensive and rich professional development for our teachers. Our teachers this summer are going to participate in 4 days of training at Solon High School, and then they're going to participate in 4 additional days spread across next school year. We think that's very important. And on top of that, we have a real asset in Christina Hammond, who goes out into classrooms and coaches our teachers and works with them through the implementation process. And this is kind of a new model for Medina City Schools, and this was really the first year that we approached things that way. And the feedback we got was pretty strong from our middle school teachers. I think, if anything, they felt overly supported with it, which is a good problem to have. So this is really an opportunity for us to build on the strengths of our teachers and enhance our mathematics program. It's an opportunity for us as educational professionals to hone our philosophy and expectations. So really, we selected CPM for a couple of core reasons. We believe that mathematics should be experienced in an engaging and inquiry-based manner, where students are the problem solvers and teachers are facilitators, and not simply dispensers of rules and procedures. We believe that in order to cultivate long-term retention, students must productively struggle and persevere in solving challenging and authentic problems. And finally, we believe that skills are developed gradually over time, little by little, and not through rigid drill and kill exercises or rote memorization. So again, the Algebra 1 textbook will be available for public review for the next 30 days at the board office. And again, I welcome the opportunity to meet with any parents, student, or community member interested in learning more about the direction we're taking with mathematics instruction in Medina City Schools. So in the interest of time, we have a few other adoption items, but I'm not going to go into great detail about all of those proposed adoptions. These are curriculum adoptions that are coming before the board for consideration this evening as part of our regular curriculum refresh cycle. In other words, it's time to update these textbooks in these subject areas. But I do want to mention that we've been working hard to clean up our adoption cycle and band grade levels and courses together to avoid singleton adoptions. So in some cases, such as world history, which you'll see on the agenda tonight, this will be the last time courses are adopted in isolation in this manner. So moving forward, our goal is to adopt entire subject areas and grade bands. So that's part of the work that Tina and I have been undertaking in our department. So with that being said, the new materials in addition to CPM are the Blitzer textbook for Honors Algebra 2 with Trigonometry. This is the same text we've used in the past, except it's the updated copyright date. They have been waiting, and they really can't wait for 3 years for us to determine what direction to go for Honors Algebra 2. So they are due this year for adoption. Also, High School Spanish 1 and our Middle School Spanish 1A in 7th grade and 1B in 8th grade will be adopting a McGraw-Hill 2016 text, again phasing it in over the next 2 years in Spanish 2 and Spanish 3. And our World History is a Houghton Mifflin Harcourt adoption, 2018. And finally, we have a High School Business Accounting textbook, which is Glencoe 2016. And again, all materials on review at 739 Weymouth Road, across the street at the board office. I welcome any questions.
I have one quick one. So this means the next 2 years we'll be doing geometry next year and Algebra 2 the following year from an adoption standpoint?
Yes, that's correct.
And you mentioned the other ones were kind of on the right cycle to be ordering. Are we close to that cycle for the math? Were we close to the cycle that we were having to reboot our curriculum anyway?
Yes.
Thinking from a financial standpoint, it's not too much duplication.
No, they were due for adoption this year, and we had originally intended to adopt Algebra 1 through Algebra 2, the entire core. However, we decided to take a step back, mainly because of the reasons that I outlined this evening.
So the only, in addition to that, then the question, the Algebra 2 one, that's the next one.
Right.
That's kind of the only sunk cost. It's kind of the way I would look at it. It's only going to be used for 2 years. Is that correct?
Well, Algebra 2 is, Honors Algebra 2 is something that is still up in the air in terms of what direction we'll go in.
Of whether or not they're going to do CPM.
Correct.
Okay. All
We
right.
will go through regular regular Algebra 2, but we're not sure if we're going to go with the upper level math courses, including Honors Algebra 2 at Trig. So it may not be a 2-year expense. It may actually be a full cycle.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. All right. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank our board members for giving up some of your evening last Monday night so we could present to you our strategic plan. Just to provide you with a quick update, I did receive quite a bit of feedback from many of you, and I know that feedback is going to continue to come in. I do anticipate that there will be some tweaks based off of your feedback over the course of the past week or two. I'm not prepared to share a bunch of specifics, but I can tell you we're going to be looking at some additions to the curricular portion of the strategic plan. Some of the areas we're talking about is gifted programming, as well as increased support for the instruction of reading and writing down at the lower grade levels. We're also, the other thing that we're looking at including is that our facilities committee does such an outstanding job in budgeting and looking at projects every year. And one of the things that we're going to take a look at is incorporating a lot of those items within the strategic plan, as well as having discussion about the budgeting for those projects. And again, I anticipate that much of that will occur within the facilities committee, which is also open up for the public to attend if they choose. Any questions?
I had a clarification step for just that part. The strategic plan that was shared last Monday with us is that because it has the word 5 years attached to it, it kind of confused some people who've asked me questions today. We are not approving the 5-year strategic plan tonight. We're approving in a normal course of events the 5-year financial forecast. Happens to have the word 5-year with it, but it threw people for a loop today. What we're doing is the normal Dave Chambers 5-year forecast that's been at least on the agenda twice a year, right? That we do that? And this is the one time in the spring that we do that, I believe. So 2 separate things. The strategic plan is later. This is the 5-year financial forecast. That's what we're doing today.
That's correct. The strategic plan is going to be presented to the community on June 10th at the public library at 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm hoping to present the strategic plan to the board for adoption at our June regular meeting after we have presented it to our community. And of course, that strategic plan, although they're 2 separate things, they impact each other. We'll be using that strategic plan here in the future to help develop our 5-year forecast as well. 2017 and 2018 staffing. I want to talk a little bit about the direction we're heading with staffing for next school year. We're already working very hard to prepare for the 2017-2018 school year, believe it or not. We're taking a very student-centered approach towards our personnel and staffing to ensure that our students are receiving the best they can in regards to academics. One concern that we've had is the size of our study halls, particularly at the high school, middle schools as well, and the ability of our students to get into classes that they're requesting. We've had some students who have been blocked out of classes. I know I've heard from many parents who are frustrated because their children, as a freshman or sophomore, didn't get the opportunity to get into a course, and it was because we didn't have enough teachers to teach it. So this year we are looking at adding some teaching positions across the district to better meet students' needs. Currently at the high school we're looking at a science position to decrease our science numbers, which is important in a lab setting, as well as allow more students into science elective coursework and advanced science coursework as well. We're also looking at adding a music director position, an assistant director. This person will serve one of the middle schools as well. I believe we have it slated for Claggett right now. One of our middle schools as well as the high school. At the middle school, they'll be the main director of that building. Up at the high school, they'll serve in 2 roles where they will not only be helping the band, but they'll be assisting our orchestra as well. So I think we're really going to be able to get bang for our buck out of that position in terms of reaching our students. One thing that's very important to note is we have, well, if you include orchestra, well over 500 students in our musical instrument programs. And currently, the band program, middle and high, is being overseen by 2 staff members. And I think it's vitally important that we increase that. It's going to allow for more individualized instruction at the middle school levels as well as the high school level as students move through the music programs. It's also going to provide Jason Locker, our current head band director, the opportunity to work with students at both Root and at Claggett instead of just at Claggett, which is another key thing for a head director. In addition, we're looking at our guidance positions at the middle schools. Currently, we have a guidance counselor and a half at each of our middle schools. This is down from what we used to have. With increasing needs at both buildings, we want to ensure that students have the support they need from counseling. So we'd like to bring those both back up to 2 full positions instead of 1.5. In addition to that, we're taking a close look at our elementary numbers and trying to ensure that we are offering appropriate class sizes. So we're looking at avoiding class sizes that are in the low 30s, high 20s, and try and keep the lower class sizes at the lower grade levels with a little bit of an increase as we move up in the grade levels. Any questions about personnel and staffing? Several events I want to make you aware of. It's a busy time of year. It's an exciting time of year. Tomorrow evening, we have our awards, senior awards, here at the high school. We have our baccalaureate coming up on Thursday. Our Medina Career Center is also going to be using our gym to recognize students. Strings in the Park on May 19th down at Medina Square. Also, I've been invited to speak at our County Sea of Youth Police. I've been privileged to represent some of the officers that have lost their lives in the line of duty. And I encourage you to come out to that event as well. It is organized and run by one of our students. And commencement, believe it or not, is next Saturday down at the JAR at the University of Akron. And I would like to thank Jeff and our high school guidance counselors and the work that they put into planning that event. Having planned graduations myself, I know what kind of an undertaking that can be. We have our end of school dance party at Medina Square, which I believe we started 2 years ago and is now an annual event for us. I think it's a great time to celebrate our schools and our community all at the same time. And then we'll be honoring our staff at our staff closing ceremony on May 26th, which is a staff work day, and students are done with that day. And then, of course, I've already mentioned our June 10th community chat to present our finalized strategic plan. I would like to note on here the last thing for August 10th is our board retreat. Our location for the retreat has changed, as you can see. Originally, we were going to meet at the library. The library doesn't open early enough to accommodate us. So Corkscrew has offered to allow us to use one of their rooms to hold our retreat. I anticipate that retreat will be a half a day, 8:30 till approximately noon, 1 o'clock, depending on how the agenda moves. And of course, that retreat is open for public view as well. Any questions about any of my items?
Thank you very much. Now for the treasurer's communications.
The district bank balance dropped by nearly $2 million from April to May. We're down to $80.37 million. The general revenue, it increased nearly $2 million also from last April to this April. So we're looking good on our revenue side. All but our property tax allocation were reasons for increase. As you know, the property tax allocation contains the tangible personal property tax loss reimbursement and that is down because the state's eliminating that for us. Our general fund expenditures, those were up roughly $2.4 million from last April. Everything is accountable for this. Personal services, benefits, purchase services, supplies, and capital. The sales tax fund is looking good right now at $3.7 million. We do have our interest payments that are coming due June 1st, so that'll affect the balance here. The district received the first sales tax payment for the 2017 year, and it was roughly $820,000. The district spent approximately $31,000 out of the sales tax here in the month of April. District has received $488,000 in interest earnings this year. That's roughly $57,000 over last year for the entire year. So our interest is up, and thanks to the feds, their interest rates are growing on a monthly basis, it looks like right now, which does our CDs no good if they grow too fast. So we're letting them cool right now. District currently has 290 plus days in True Days cash. Again, the True Days cash is our daily expenditures divided by 365 days. Questions? Okay, I'm just going to summarize our 5-year forecast. Yes, Mr. Eastwood.
No, I was just going to go that way.
Okay, I'm just going to summarize our 5-year forecast. If you go to the last page there, Pro, people will be able to see the forecast as I'm talking about it. The 5-year forecast is mandated by the state of Ohio. We have to present it to the board and have it for adoption here in October and May. With our 5-year forecast, in May we usually just do updates. October is the intricacies of the forecast throughout the 5 years. The May is just a update of what has occurred this year, and if we know something that has occurred, we stretch it out through the rest of the forecast. Our revenues are up compared to October. The October forecast, the majority of this increase has come from property taxes. Our property tax payers were, I don't want to call them eager to pay their taxes, but people paid their taxes early this year. Either they paid off their full year's taxes, or they were, as I say, eager to pay. However, this will lead to a decrease in the second half of the year. So this decrease is reflective in the fiscal year 18, and we're assuming that because we're going to have a lower first half to the fiscal year 18, it's going to prove to be a lower fiscal year 18 altogether. The district also has assumed that the emergency levy will end December of 18. We're anticipating to receive less revenues from the state as well for funding purposes. This is because the state believes, and I've spoken to you about this before, the state believes that Medina is a wealthy district as compared to other districts in the state. And if you look on item 1.035, you'll see that going across that we're decreasing as the 5 years goes. The last of the tangible personal property tax loss reimbursement funds will be received next year, and it's estimated to be roughly $150,000. At one point, the district was receiving $7.8 million in tangible personal property taxes. This has been taken from the schools, taken from the cities, taken from any taxing entity back in 2006. Was supposed to be replaced by the CAT tax. The CAT tax has been, the replacement has been lowered each year by the state. And so, as I say, we're anticipating $150,000 here to come next year. On the expenditure side, our salaries, benefits, purchase services are all higher than anticipated. And the financial reports have shown an increase between 2.5 and 3.6% every month for our salaries and benefits. Also, the districts will be experiencing a 27th pay during the fiscal year. So this is reflective here in 2017 fiscal year. We have also seen increases in purchase services. and this relates to our professional services, tuition payments, and utilities. So those have all been things that we cannot control, but they do hit our 5-year forecast. The district has assumed the addition of the negotiated contracts for the upcoming years. Also, we have included anticipated increases beyond the contracts to be more fiscally appropriate when it comes to the 5-year forecast. District had a good year with our self-insurance funds. We're looking at minimal increase over the 5-year forecast itself. We do not anticipate monies needed for advances at this time. As you recall, we put advances into our federal funds and our cafeteria fund last year in June. We are waiting to see if the state will pay us. Last year they didn't pay us until the 26th or 27th of the month. Our board meeting was before that time. We are hoping that they will give us payments to clear out any deficits at that point. So we'll be looking again here towards the middle of June to see what will happen with advances. And finally, the bottom of the forecast, if you look at it, it shows a possible renewal of the emergency levy beginning in 2019. To say that the district has been conservative with the funds of the taxpayers is putting it mildly. We have been very conservative. The district has added programming and transportation based on what was requested with the levy. The forecast shows the emergency levy will last for the entire 5 years, which is what we were telling them from the very beginning. Being conservative in the being conservative in the spending of the emergency levy has allowed the district to increase its cash balance. However, this has not allowed the district to move forward academically. Moving forward can only happen if the district proceeds with the strategic plan that you were talking about before and that Mr. Sable was talking about, and moving forward with its goals, which include additional programming, additional communication, and additional capital outlay. The district intends to remain fiscally conservative, but wants to be able to achieve higher academic programs and potential for all students. And this is what our 5-year forecast does not show at this point, and we're hoping to get it to show that in the near future. Questions?
Yep. My favorite line is the green one, 6.010. And that one clearly shows, and with looking at this whole grid, sometimes makes people wonder what are the important numbers, and I'll just tell you what it is to me. It's that green one. It's when do we start on an annual basis spending more than we're bringing in. And that shows that the emergency levy runs out halfway through that year. Correct. The 18-19 year. And at that point, that's why the need for that levy at the latest point would be the fall of that year, which would put right at the fall of 2018, which would be from that 5 years, which is what we said. That's so correct. It's as per plan, that's when it would be going negative without the levy. Correct. And you know, my thought always is to not deficit spend. And so that's what's key about that line, is to how do we keep that positive. And that's why the levy's critical, whether it's an emergency or an ongoing one that we present at that time. That's critical to the community to know that's when that's going to happen. It'll be just as planned per, you know, given we have to look at the strategic plan and see when we put that in. But either way, new money is 2019, January 1st, correct? Thank you.
Yes, that's correct. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Moving forward into the board communications, do we have any reports on committees across the board?
Finance will meet Wednesday at 6 before the award ceremony. And then the rec center will meet Thursday morning at 7:30 at the rec center. So just to, and of course the public is welcome to attend both of those. Thank you.
And our facilities meeting is going to be this Friday, the 18th. No?
No, it's the that's correct. We moved it from the 5th to the 18th.
Right. And likewise, people are welcome to join us at that 8 o'clock at the board offices.
And Becky and I met with the policy group, and the result of that is in the agenda for tonight for the first reading. So we'll continue to meet next month, I'm sure.
I appreciate that policy committee. I was on that once, and that's a lot of reading. It's a lot of review. Chris does an amazing job getting that information, and there's just so much of it. I mean, I just tip my hat to her and to you guys. Thank you for that. Moving forward to action items.
Our first action item tonight is the Treasurer's Report. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the April 2017 Treasurer's Report as presented. One comment I do want to add here is it's almost laughable how the state identifies districts as wealthy or poor. And I can tell you it's not based off of the money in the bank. Cloverleaf is also considered a wealthy district, and they've really have struggled financially over the past 5 to 6 years. Second item is donations. It is recommended that the Board of Education accept the following donations to the Medina City Schools. A couple things I would like to point out here is the continued support of our PTOs across the district. I don't think there's a month that goes by that I'm not sitting here reading a $1,000 plus donation to our schools from our PTOs through their fundraisers. In addition to that, I'd like to point out the multiple individuals as well as corporations that have donated to Alacanavan and their garden club. We're fortunate to have outside financial support to give our students, provide our students with these extended academic opportunities. And item number 3, it is recommended that the Board of Education adopt resolution to award the bid for the Ken Duke Stadium Lighting Control Project to Lake Erie Electric in the amount of $64,200. This is to do repairs on the lighting system over at the stadium. We don't have a choice with this. This is going to bring and ensure that our electrical switches and boxes are all up to code and safe. Item number 4, resolution to award the bid for Ken Duke Stadium field turf replacement. It is recommended that the Board of Education adopt the resolution to award the bid for the Ken Duke Stadium field turf replacement to A-Turf in the amount of $488,900. Couple bits of information that I would like to provide on this. I would like to thank our turf committee led by Mr. Burkhart, as well as our athletic director, Mr. Hodke, for the time and effort that they put into visiting numerous schools in the area to research their turf. And really what they focused on during the turf research is the longevity and the safety of the various fields, as well as getting feedback from other school districts and organizations on how cooperative the companies have been to help maintain those fields. As one of the reasons why I'm recommending A-Turf to you today. They are a little bit of a smaller company than some of the big boys that you heard of out there, and they are more local. They are headquartered in Buffalo. Not only do they offer an outstanding product at a competitive price, but one of the things that was really vital to us is how is their service, especially if there ends up being any problems, repairs, etc. Because we want this field turf to last. Our goal is a minimum of at least 12 years, and that's going to be an important component in helping to increase the longevity of our turf. I also want to add that the amount that we are recommending here is we are slightly over budgeted, and we did that on purpose. I'd like to see the project come back lower than this, but we wanted to make sure that we were prepared moving forward for potential roadblocks or changes to the turf. In addition to that, we are also continuing to work on turf sponsorship. We actually have a meeting set up for this Thursday, which I think is going to be promising. We will be making a decision following Thursday's meeting as to whether to reach out to a marketing firm to assist us. We are looking for either a single donor or multiple donors to help us fund the turf. In order for the turf to be in place and playable for the beginning of the fall sports seasons, we do have to move forward now with a contract recommendation so that they can begin work this summer. We are paying upfront for these costs with sales tax dollars that were intended for improvement projects.
Mr. Sable, I wanted to compliment the same group that you just talked about, but also the use of our work sessions. You had Milo, I don't know his last name, but he came and presented very thoroughly. He showed us exactly how the turf would look and why it would look that way, and how it's going to increase the safety of all the athletes that play on that field. And it was a very impressive display, as well as just to know that we're going to be so much better off from a safety standpoint going forward. So thanks to Mr. Burkhardt and everybody involved in that.
The item number 5 are policies for consideration. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the first reading of the following revised bylaw and new revised and replacement policies. I would like to point out that most of these, I know there's a lot of them here tonight, are updates to current policies that are already in place. I am not presenting these to you for adoption. It is a first reading. So these policies will be available for review over the course of the next month before they're recommended for adoption. Number 6 is memorandums of understanding. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the memorandums of understanding between the Medina City School District and the following colleges and universities: Cuyahoga Community College District, Kent State University, Lorain County Community College, and the University of Akron for the College Credit Plus program. Again, this is state legislation. We do not have a choice with this. We are mandated to enter into MOUs, memorandums of understanding, for the College Credit Plus programming with at least one college or university. It is to our advantage to go into multiple MOUs because it gives us more control over the costs if a student decides that they want to attend College Credit Plus classes at one of these universities. It sets the cost ahead of time for us that we've worked with the university. Whether we're in a partnership or not with that university, the student still has a right to attend it for CCP, but we lose the locked-in prices. Number 7, new middle school course offerings. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the new middle school course offerings for the 2017-28 school year. These were presented and discussed at our previous work session. These are going to put in place an increased amount of electives for our students. Again, this is with one of our goals in getting kids out of study halls and getting them into academic classrooms and giving them more opportunities. Number 8 is our photography contract for the 2017 and 2018 and 2018 and 2019 school years, plus a third-year option for the 2019-2020 school year. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the photography contract with Life Touch Studios for the 2017-18 and 18-19 school years, plus a third-year option for the 19-20 school year. And Life Touch is the company we have been working with in previous years. They work with us on our yearbooks as well as all of our student pictures. Number 9 is a recommendation for a field trip for next school year. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following overnight field trip in compliance with Policy 2340 for the 17-18 school year. And this is the performance trip for Medina High School's band to Orlando, Florida. They participate in this trip every other year. Number 10 is agreement with the Juvenile Detention Center summer program. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the Juvenile Detention Center program agreement between the Medina County Juvenile Detention Center and Medina City School District for the Medina City Schools to provide education services for students at the detention center between June 1st, 2017 through August 11th, 2017. This program is funded through grants and through our local districts. And I'm going to read the next one and then explain that a little bit because they're related. Number 11 is agreement between the Juvenile Detention Center. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the service agreement between the Medina County Juvenile Detention Center and the Medina City School District. When executed, will allow the Medina City Schools to provide educational services to Medina County students who are confined to that facility commencing August 21st, 2017 through May 30th, 2018. And what these two agreements are about is public schools are mandated by law to work with the Juvenile Detention Center to ensure that students continue to receive their free education while they are incarcerated. The way it works here in Medina County is Medina City Schools provides the teachers and the curriculum and the instruction for those schools or for that school throughout the year at the detention center. We do have students from all over Medina County that go to that detention center. So what happens is the other districts pay us annually their percentage of the costs for the detention center and academics. So we are, it's all funneling through us, but we are sharing the burden of those costs with all the public districts across the county. Number 12 is a lease agreement. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the lease agreement between Michael Elio and the Medina City School District to enter into a 5-year lease agreement for the ice cream stand located at 680-686 Lafayette Road. This is right outside of our service center. It's the little education ice cream shack that was actually mentioned at the beginning by one of our groups as donating money. What that is it's an ice cream house that was there when we purchased the property, and we had a retired teacher that asked if they could enter into a lease agreement to run that ice cream shop. We were just going to knock it down because it doesn't serve a purpose for us, but now it's serving a purpose and a partnership with a community member. I also have to say that I think it's a point of pride, especially at the very beginning of the school year when we're taking our new staff around and showing them the district and introducing them to the Medina City schools and the community. And he always provides our new staff with free ice cream. And if you haven't gotten an ice cream cookie from there, I highly recommend it because it's the best I've ever had. Number 13 is service agreements, extended school year services for the 2016-17 school year. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following extended school year service agreements for the 2016-17 school year as listed. I do want to mention that this occurs on an annual basis. We are mandated by law to provide extended school year services for students on IEPs that are identified as needing the service. So this will provide them with an extended school year to keep them up on their academics heading into the next school year.
Mr. Sable, I think there might be a 0 on the last one missing. Looks like 12,000, but Just to confirm, that's 12,000 for the summer reinforcement.
Solutions behavior. I'm not sure which one you're looking at.
It's just a typo there.
Oh, yes, that is 12,000. I was on the next service agreement already. Service agreements for the 2017-2018 year. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following service agreements for the 17-18 school year. Again, these are mandated services per students' IEPs and their needs to provide them an equal education. Service agreements is again number 15 with extended school year services for the 17 and 18 year. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following service agreements with extended school year services if needed for the 2017-18 school year. So again, these are additional services. This is actually pass-through funds for some of the private schools that are within our district boundaries. But this does not cost our district any money. Stipend payment, number 16. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the stipend payment to Ms. Kelly Kreiner in the amount of $300 from Kent State University for being a cooperating teacher for a Kent State University student during the spring semester of 2017. So that's training our future teachers. And number 17, supplemental to permanent appropriations. Mr. Chambers.
Yes, these are the end of the year monies that the different buildings are looking at. If you look down below, you'll see our 401s. This is the last of the biennium for our auxiliary services. So they're looking at first the ones that end in 790-something-7. Those are changes at the state level with their final funding. And then the ones that end in 6 are carryover funds that they still have available. So at the end of June here, they have the ability to spend these monies. And so after the biennium is done, they no longer get any monies carried over for the biennium. So they're looking at spending as fast as possible. Number 18 is supplemental temporary appropriations. If you recall, you passed temporary appropriations in April. We need to start working on the summer with the rec center, so we're looking at the last payment for $138,000. Then you have a fund transfer. This is for our energy and transportation bonds that occurred here in, I believe it was the beginning of May, so we're looking at getting these monies in the right fund for the rest of the year. Number 20 is your 5-year forecast. It is recommended that the board approve the May 17 5-year forecast and notes to comply with the State of Ohio Education's requirement. Thank you.
And our final item on the consent agenda is personnel. And I actually want to make a correction here. Administrative raises should have been pulled from this section and was put on as a separate item. And I'm seeing here as I'm going through it that it's still showing there. It should not be showing there.
It is, however, in K.
Correct.
It has been moved there properly, so
Now,
I think we
what I'm
just
doing
scratch
is
that
I'm
part.
scratching it as we speak.
Got a question for Mr. Chambers. Number 17, you mentioned the supplementals. So if I look at, as an example, principal's fund at weight, you said if she doesn't use that money, that's gone? Is that what you said?
No, I was only talking about the 401 accounts, our auxiliary accounts. If you're looking at
okay, I got you.
any of your previous funds, those, if they don't use those monies, those are all back into their funds itself. they keep their cash in their accounts.
All right, I'll ask a real quick question about that same thing. This is an example of where you're trying to make it work for all the audit purposes as well of getting everything right on June 30th, correct?
This is more the example of they have their end of the year, and they're doing everything they can to make the end of the year right for the students.
But it's an example of how you have to work to make all that happen so that
yes.
that works out.
Yes.
And the good example is the sales tax fund.
Yes,
I'm assuming that that's put forth because of the turf.
that is correct.
So, I mean, immediately per one of the items up above, you already have that in your appropriations.
Correct.
It's awesome.
Back to personnel. The administrator raises are now removed from item 21. I'd like to recommend administrative contract renewals as follows. The following one-year prevention coordinator contract recommendations. In addition, we have two-year psychologist administrative contract recommendations. I would like to note that the school psychologists are now listed separate on the agenda. In the past, they had been in with the rest of the administrator contracts. They have unionized, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. So they're represented separate from the rest of the administrators. Next is the two-year administrative contract recommendations for the following administrators that are at the end of their current two-year contract. And I would like to share several retirements that we have as well. We have 4 more individuals that are putting in for retirement and are resigning for that purpose tonight. All of them are longtime staff members within the district, and I'd like to say a few words about each. Molly Adams, Waite paraprofessional for 24 years of service. Molly started as a school parent volunteer and then was hired to work as a paraprofessional at Canavan and then spent many years at the kindergarten center. She was an original staff member of Waite Elementary and a good friend of Mr. Waite. She is known for spreading cheer and kindness to both students and staff. The next one is Dale Bechtel. He's a maintenance department repairman with 20 years of service to the district. Dale is a Medina native that graduated from Medina High School. He's a master at keeping the heating and cooling working well for Medina City schools and has taught himself how to manage and oversee the advanced technology of the district's HVAC systems. Dale's easygoing manner and his expertise will be greatly missed in the maintenance department. Our next retiree is Robin Mag. She is a Fenn paraprofessional with 20 years of service. Robin is another Medina parent volunteer that turned her time in the district into a job at Fenn. She worked her entire career at Fenn Elementary. She is known as an incredible baker and cook responsible for organizing all Fenn retirement parties, dinners, and get-togethers. She has spoiled the Fenn staff and students for many years with goodies. And our last retiree for recommendation this evening is Rusty Metz. He's transportation bus driver with 20 years of service. There's never been a friendlier bus driver than Rusty Metz. She greets every student each morning with a smile and sends them home each day with warm wishes until she sees them again the next day. She loves to drive the special education bus routes and makes the perfect connection with all of her students. She is a friend to all her coworkers and will celebrate 55 years of marriage this month, along with her retirement from Medina City Schools. So all together with these retirements, we have 20, 40, 60, 80, 90 years of experience that we see retiring, and I'd like to thank each and every one of those individuals for their continued service to our district. Any questions regarding the consent agenda?
Mr. Sable, I'd like to go back up to number 7 just briefly. I've been the curriculum liaison from the board and meeting with Mr. Maddie and Mrs. Cassidy once a month for the last couple months, and they have on here the proposed middle school art electives, which are new, but they've also developed the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade course descriptions, which I don't believe were available to the public before, and I would like to thank them and the principals and the staff and everyone that they worked with to help develop those and get them out and made available to parents, because I think it is very important and I think that it'll be very useful. So thank you for that.
If I could just briefly comment on the turf. I'm in favor of the turf, although I would have to admit that the thought crossed my mind that it's a lot of money to spend, and it's a lot of our, it's probably more than a whole year of our sales tax money, because I think we have it's about half of it. Yeah, it's quite a bit of it. I know we spend some of it to cover the elementary schools and some for repairs, and I know our budget's limited with what we have. But the thought is, you know, it was a great gift from the boosters when they put it in for us. I know we've gotten great use out of it, and we appreciate so many people sacrificed very heavily when the last turf was put in. I know people donated and they bought sections, and so there were a lot of people that sacrificed for that. So, but it's not without thought and thinking about when there used to be band on the old field, and it would be a wet night, and everybody's uniforms would be covered in mud, and things like that, or the fact that the field would be torn up at times of the year when you'd have a muddy game. And then thinking too about the amount of sports that we have now that we didn't used to have. Years ago we didn't have lacrosse or rugby or girls lacrosse, boys lacrosse, and I do know that this field is going to also be lined for soccer. Not necessarily that soccer would move to the stadium, but if there would be playoff games, we usually aren't in contention for those because we don't have a turf field, and usually playoff games are played in other stadiums like that. So I think there's a lot of flexibility built into it. I think you know, obviously it is a cost. It's probably $50,000 a year to have turf when you factor it. And I know the administration's working hard to get donors lined up. So hopefully that'll happen. But I am making the decision in favor of the turf, knowing that we don't currently have a donor lined up, but hoping that that might be a possibility. But there is overwhelming, to me it seems that there's a lot of positive effects that it gives to our district to have it. So thank you.
No, and I appreciate those comments. I think it is important to mention our current football field is not lined for soccer. We are going to have the new field lined for soccer, not only so we can host events, but so that our soccer programs can get on that turf if they need to. If their grass fields aren't in good shape. The field gets extensive use. I'll be honest with you, there's other things I'd rather spend $500,000 on in the district. We don't have a choice with the turf. It's a safety concern, and it is deemed as unplayable next year. So we would have to find other fields to play on until we did something with that turf.
My comment is all the way back up under board communications. I forgot something, and that is a shout out to Cindy Grice and Wade Elementary. They had a surprise birthday party for their namesake, Mr. Ralph Waite, 91st birthday a couple weeks ago, and I only know that he was so excited that his blood pressure went up a lot. So great job with all those kids. He loved every second of it and had to rest up.
Couple things I was thinking about. Number 9 was the band trip and to Florida, and my experience there is that kids have really a lifelong memory on their Disney trip. Kids that get an opportunity to go there, I think that's something that the Medina schools makes available, and it makes memories for them for a lifetime. Also, kind of excited about number 12, and can you well, number 12 was the item with the ice cream, but it's opportunities for our young people to work and have a positive, safe experience. And the group also contributes back to the district in a couple different ways financially. So that's a kind of neat experience to see out there. It's not just letting some guy operate a business, but he's really doing it for the benefit of the kids in our community. And Tom, can you talk a little bit about 18 as far as our last year in that situation with our makeup year?
Yep, this is the 5th payment. Is that correct, Mr. Chambers? We kind of went retro about 4 years ago with making up a payment two payments that were missed of our $100,000 into the JOA for the rec center, and this is the 5th to make up that difference, and it's good to have that done so that next year the same number will say 100,000 instead of 138, and then we'll be back to normal with those payments. So, and then given whatever we'll figure out with the sponsorship here coming up, maybe that'll change. But for now, it's nice to have that knocked off or evened up.
Can I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion we accept the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Any questions among the board? Of the public? Mr. Chambers?
Mr. Callen?
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore?
Aye.
Mr. Ross?
No.
Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Mr. Eastwood?
Aye.
Thank you.
Item number H, separate voting item, is sponsor agreement. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the sponsor agreement between the Medina City School District and Partner Marketing to obtain sponsors for placement at the Medina Recreation Center. One thing I do want to clarify here is that we as a district will not be working directly with the marketing firm. I know a few of you had some questions about the agreement because we're not listed jointly throughout it. And that's because this is the city's initiative that we are going to benefit from. So any funds that are received through sponsorship are going into a joint account that we have with the city to operate and repair the recreation center.
Do I have a motion to accept item H?
I'll move we accept item H.
I'll second.
Any questions? Board?
Just a comment real quick. And I know that, you know, what they charge for the first year seems steep, that they take half, I guess. But, you know, right now we don't have sponsorship, so I guess half is better than nothing right now with what we're getting. And this will help lower, as Tom just mentioned, our 100,000 per year. So if we're able to even get 20,000 or some number, it's monies that would go back to the district. So I don't want to be jealous that their fee's that high, but it does go down over the years in year 2, year 3, year 4. So they should be motivated the first year to get sponsors, since they get half the revenue for it. So we'll see what they can do for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions among the group, public? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Skidmore?
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Mr. Callen?
Abstain.
And Mr. Eastwood?
Aye.
Thank you.
Item I is Medina City Schools Psychologist Association negotiated agreement. I had mentioned earlier in a previous board meetings that our school psychologists have developed their own union. We have spent some time this year in negotiations with them to come to agreement and to create an initial contract with that group. This is the first agreement that we have ever had with our school psychologists. A few things that I would like to point out within the agreement is it was an interesting process in developing this contract simply because of the way that they meet our students' needs on a yearly basis, and having to work within the contract, them showing flexibility with their hours and things like that so they can best meet the needs of our students. And I do want to point out that they were very understanding of that need within their positions. The other thing that we've done within this contract is their pay. Their pay is very similar to what it currently is. There are built-in increases within that pay, as you would expect when you go through a negotiations. One of the things we did within the contract is align them a little more closely with our classified and our certified contracts, and make sure that we are clear and open with any reimbursement that they are receiving. So some benefits that they had received in the past have enrolled within their contract, again, so it's straightforward. In terms of settling on a percentage, we did come to agreement, and they ratified a contract for 3 years plus 1. And I know this isn't the norm. The reason why we went with +1 is it allows us to space out our contracts. We negotiated 3 union contracts this year all at once, so it's going to allow us to better dedicate our time to the contracts on different years rather than doing them all at once. The other thing that it does for us is it aligns the negotiations process to after the teachers. The school psychologists have some Me Too language in regards to their health benefits, which was actually very important to the administration. And the reason why is we have 8 or 9 school psychologists, and we don't want to be in a situation where 8 or 9 employees are driving the health care within the district. We want to work with our bigger organization so we have consistency. In terms of increases, we're recommending a 2% increase for this school year. They have not had an increase at all this year. That 2% mirrors what our other unions have received this current year. It then goes out for the next 3 years with a 1.5, 1.5, and a 1.5. Any questions regarding the school psychologist negotiated agreement?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the initial collective bargaining agreement with the Medina City School Psychologists Association effective July 1st, 2016 through June 30th, 2020.
I'll second that. Any questions, comments? Any in the public? Questions or comments? David.
Ms. Parkers?
Aye.
Mr. Eastwood?
Aye.
Mr. Ross?
No.
Mr. Skidmore?
Aye.
Mr. Cahalan?
Aye.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda, item J, Medina City Teacher Association Successor Agreement. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the initial collective bargaining agreement with the Medina City Schools. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. Sorry about that. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve a 2-year successor agreement with the Medina City Teachers Association effective July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2019. What we've worked on with our teachers is a 2-year agreement. The 2-year agreement is for a 2% increase in year 1 and a 1% increase in year 2. I would like to really commend our MCTA leadership, and I know David Hammond is here tonight. You know, I've had the opportunity to participate in negotiations in 3 different districts, and the amount of time that we talked about what's best for kids and what's best instructionally throughout this process really impressed me. Of course, dollar and cents were part of that conversation, but part of this agreement is to develop 2 committees that are going to be looking at our academics both at the high school and at the middle school. And those teacher and administrator committees are going to be exploring how we can expand the instructional time at the high school for each of the periods. They currently are 44 minutes, and we'd like them longer than that. So we're going to sit down with the teachers and try and work that one out. The second piece is at our middle schools. We had at one time had a teaming method and philosophy in place at our middle schools, and we're going to be working with our teachers to explore a cost-effective way to implement teaming because teaming, if it's done well and done the right way, does offer the best support in academics for our middle school students as they're transitioning to the high school. With this successor agreement, there are no changes to the health care, which we increased quite a bit during the last negotiations. In addition to that, there's just a little bit of change to some of the language, some changes that were mandated by law to adjust. For instance, adjusting how we count student time from days, which it used to be, to hours. In addition, we're mandated to implement a formal guidance counselor evaluation process, which is similar to the Ohio teacher evaluation system. So that is going to be implemented within this contract as well.
Do I have a motion?
I commend our administration and the union for reaching this agreement. I believe it does put kids first and focuses on every student every day. And with that, I would like to make a motion to approve a 2-year successor agreement with MCTA effective July 1st, 2017 through June 30th, 2019.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Ron. Any comments or questions among the board?
I have a comment. Also piling on with the commending the administration and the teachers union and Mr. Hammond especially. Been on the board 5 years, and 4 years I believe we've been fiscally responsible. We've been able to put kids first and keep skilled teachers, great people around, and make it work. And make it work with our 5-year emergency levy as well. So it sounds like a pretty good thing to do into the future as well. Congratulations, you guys.
I want to pass on appreciation for how the team worked, administration as well as our MCTA. It doesn't take long to look around our state and see different things happening, let alone around our county. And I really believe the MCTA came and worked, putting the kids first without a question. And I really appreciate that and appreciate how we're going to put this forward and looking forward to that. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the public? Mr. Chambers.
Ms. Parkers?
Aye.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Mr. Cahalan?
Aye.
Mr. Gidmore?
Aye.
Mr. Eastwood?
Aye.
Thank you.
And our final item is administrator raises. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve a pay raise of 2% for all administrators, excluding the superintendent and treasurer, for the 2017-2018 school year, consistent with raises granted to certificate and classified employees for the same school year.
Can I have a motion to accept item K?
I'll move we accept item K.
I'll second that. Any comments or questions among the board?
We just appreciate the work the administrators do. They put in a lot of hours, and and they do work hard, so we appreciate that, and we want to make sure that we're equitable and fair with all of our staff, so thank you.
I'll ditto that. And the longer I'm around here, the more I see how much our administrators do. Very appreciative of that. And before I make a mess of myself, I will stop that conversation. Thank you, though. Seriously. From our public? Mr. Chambers.
Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Mr. Eastwood.
Aye.
Mr. Hale.
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
I'm sorry, Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
Thank you.
And that brings us to a point of public participation. If anybody would like to come and approach and discuss items that haven't been previously discussed. Thank you. We will be, well, I'll be looking to have a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session to consider the employment, compensation of a public employee or official, and that would be it. Thank you.
I'll second that. Any questions, comments? We will not make any, be voting on anything, and who do we want to have with us? Just us. Okay, thank you very much.
Call roll.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
Mr. Eastwood.
Aye.
Let's go with Mr. Cahalan.
Aye.
Mr. Ross. Aye. Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Thank you.